to our welcome, Dr. Aditi. It was nice to see you again. We really enjoyed last time your talk.
Yeah, indeed, my pleasure, ma'am, to meet again.
Welcome to Mehta Mehta series of webinar on CSR. And as usual, we have with us today's this is the second program on this topic of BRSR. And with us today, uh, topic is BRSR. Yeah, we are taking little detail now. Last year webinar, we are just has a basic introduction of BRSR. Now we are taking SDG and NGRBC. And we have with us Dr. Aditi Mishal. She was there with us last program also, and we really enjoyed. To formally introduce Dr. Aditi, Dr. Aditi is a GRI certified sustainability professional with 24 years of experience and leads ESG at Welspun Enterprises. She leads the company's comprehensive ESG strategy and implementation, focusing on embedding sustainability into business operations. She serves honorary positions at the International Sustainability Operations. She serves honorary positions at the International Sustainability Water Sustainability Coalition, DI Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Joint Values. With a PhD in sustainability, green behavior, she owns a patent for the smart toilet tracking system and a copyrighted work on empowering sanitation decisions with a global system science for sustainability, and has a notable academic record with 10 plus Scopus papers, 3 publications in narrative journals and presentations at 15 plus international conferences at NUS Singapore and Harvard Martin Center Boston. Welcome, Dr. Aditi. And I will not read now this all.
Thank you so much.
This will take a lot of time. But we really welcome because the same is introduced and you have been wonderful for our session last time also. Friends, as usual, we have with us our own Sudhakar Saraswatula, Chief Consultant Mehta Mehta. Everyone knows him, so I'm not introducing him. And we have our moderator, Dolly Thakker. She's a certified CS professional from ICSI and CS background and holds masters in commerce and handles secretarial compliance matters. And she's heading CSR department of Mehta Mehta. With this, I will thank all panelists for today's discussion, and I'll request Dolly to start with the presentation. Thank you. Before that, if Dr. Aditi wants to say a few words on the topic and Sudhakar wants to say, and then Dolly.
Sure. Thank you for the kind introduction, ma'am, and taking the discussion forward. In the interest of all of the attendees, I think some of the attendees weren't there in the last podcast series. They may have missed looking at what happened in the last podcast series. For them, I would just like to say that we talked about the genesis of BRSR. So where BRSR guidelines, the standards have come from. So we talked about BRR, we talked about, even before that, we talked about what are the, the challenges which happened in regards with the governance globally, or in Indian cases, we know the case of Satyam, we know the case of Kingfisher and other companies. We talked about the challenges in regards with environment. We talked about the cases where the DDT was so prevalently used, which led to Silent Spring in US, which actually triggered a lot of thinking in regards with environment. The oil spill is something that is very famous and we all know about, and unfortunately keeps happening on and off. The challenges in regards with the social factors, like where some of the great companies like Nike, and it has been seen that child labor was put to use in some of the uh, factories in the developing countries in regards with Nike, and it caused a lot of stuff. And these all things actually led to the thought process that we need a framework which will monitor responsible business and overcome these challenges that we see in regards with the environmental thing, the governance, and the social factors. And there we have ESG. We talked about in regards with India, how the developments have been. And now we are moving towards this topic where we are talking about BRSR. How is it connected with SDGs and NGRBC? That is the National Guidelines for Responsible Business and Conduct. So, when we talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I would like you all to take one step back and see what happened before 2015. Before 2015, also we had goals in place, and they were called as the Millennium Development Goals. However, the difference between the Millennium Development Goals and the SDGs is that the SDGs are well formed, more comprehensive. They cover almost all of the important things. So, in a layman term, if we want to see the world the way it should be, what are those factors? And that is what defines these sustainable development goals in these 17 different areas. And not only that, the goals became more comprehensive, like beyond peace, beyond women empowerment, beyond, you know, so it further included climate change. It included other important issues which were left out in the Millennium Development Goals. And beyond MDGs, the SDGs were also smart goals, where proper metrics was applied to each to identify 232 indicators, which are being monitored globally, nationally, yeah, state-wise, each village-wise. Yeah. So these are the same metric available globally and to each nation. So it has brought universality principle in regards with monitoring the development across all nations globally without any discrimination and with that inclusivity. So that's the difference between the SDGs and the MDGs. There's just one last point which I will make and then hand over for further discussion. We can say that BRSR is like mirror for the organization. It shows what the mirror looks like in the eyes of its stakeholders. Yeah. So what the organization is doing good, doing bad, doing ugly, best, whatever. Okay. So BRSR is like mirror for the organization. SDGs is like the map. So SDGs is like the true north principle for the globe, for the world, for nations, for corporates, for everyone. This is the direction that we would all like to go, and that is the right way to do it. Okay. So SDGs is like that map. Yeah. And NGRBC is like that foundation of ethics, which will help the Indian corporate traverse towards that particular path of SDGs and have a better, good-looking organization in the eyes of stakeholders in the mirror of BRSR. So with this, over to you, Dolly. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Aditi. So, Dr. You
Yeah.
like to say something?
In fact, I think Dr. Aditi has covered almost the Millennium Development Goals as well as Sustainability Development Goals. So, not much for me to add, but however, I remember one quote of Rabindranath Tagore wherein he said that The one who plant trees, knowing that neither he may never sit in their shade, nor may enjoy its fruits, has started to understand the meaning of life. In fact, sustainability is the ability to continue over a long period of time. In, and in the present world, sustainability is something that investors are demanding, customers are expecting, and shareholders are relying on, and employees are valuing. This is what precisely what Dr. Aditi has said that the 17 sustainability development goals, or if there is a map, maybe BRSR is the reporting of the same. At the same point of time, when we talk about this NG, BRG, NGRBC principles, there are nine principles are there, and in fact, if you see those nine principles, though we talk so many times, the governance and also we can equally say that these are nothing but the governance principles, how the business is to be conducted. In fact, it starts that, the first principle itself, it talks about that business has to be conducted in an ethical, transparent, and accountable manner. They have to respect employees. They have to respect about the diversity, the gender diversity. They have to respect the environment. They have to respect so many things like that. Whatever the services they are offering, that should be beneficial to the customer. So over the presentation of Dolly, we will discuss these things in detail. But however, these are the, in fact, these NGRBC principles which were laid down in 2018, if I am not wrong. This is also, I mean, they have to be in alignment with the SDG goals, which are about 17 goals are there, which we will discuss that also in detail. And Dolly may start her presentation, and wherever it is required, I will pitch in there. Thank you.
Also, yeah.
Yeah, no, start.
Yeah. So first of all, everyone, welcome to the today's session. I would like to thank you, Ms. Aditi and Sudhakar sir as well for giving detailed inputs on the SDG NGRBC as well as how it will be relevant with the BRSR. So to start further, as mentioned by Aditi ma'am, last time we had spoke about BRR, BRSR. Basically, we were talking about the evolution, how genesis of BRSR, how BRSR started, and why it was required. So now moving onwards, as we all know, in the BRSR format, there is section B and C, which talks about, which is derived from NGRBC and this SDG goals. So we thought of, why not have one session on this to understand the importance of SDG and NGRBC, while it will help the professionals to, draft the report, prepare the report on BRSR. So we'll start with the session now. So in this, we will be starting, first to understand about how the SDG has derived and what was there, before SDG. This is already mentioned by Aditi ma'am, that already Millennium Development Goals, which were developed in year 2000, and later on there were 8 goals in that. Basically, it was talking more on the poverty and to how to improvise the health. Later on, the UN nations, they realized that these goals are not sufficient. We need to, think beyond, and we need to develop a better goals. So they developed the Sustainable Development Goals. And then there are 17 goals, which is, talking about a different parameters for our ideal world, I would say, that we should be, looking upon. So we'll start with the evolution first. Ma'am, if you want to speak, or Sudhakar sir, you want to add on anything for the evolution part?
Yeah, I think, Dolly, I did mention about the evolution of SDGs for that matter, and how, when we look at the MDGs and the SDGs, there was one more important point that probably we should be talking about is the inclusivity. Yeah, one. And second part, I think, what was missing was the MDGs were mainly top-bottom driven in the sense it was only UN-led action or government-led action. However, the communities were left out. Okay. But then when the development has to happen on ground, and what only if we follow only the top-down approach, it wouldn't have taken us to the development that we see today unless we included all of the community members together, and particularly the community left out, yeah, or the minority communities for that matter, or the developing nations for that matter. Yeah. So I think when talking about the evolution of SDG from the MDGs, I personally met a person who personally met one of the executives of United Nations who was part of actually the committee which formed SDGs. And so much of thoughtfulness went into the SDG formation, that which color has to be denoted to which SDG, yeah, and how do we define each metric for each of these 17 different development goals. So a lot of thoughtfulness went into actually this exercise with the design thinking approach and with multiple stakeholders together to make SDGs so comprehensive. And every year in United Nations, New York, there is a summit which happens, which is talked about as SDG Summit. Okay, so where they are tracking the development across all globes and even for India. India, as of today, ranks 112 out of all of the 200 plus some countries when it comes to SDGs. We have to really catch up. But then considering that we come from the developing part of the world, where we started, we have still made a substantial development, you can say. But it's still a long way to go. To my surprise, the three top states that I read about, and one of it was Himachal Pradesh. They are front runners in terms of the sustainable development in India. So that was something which was very interesting for me to look at. So over to you.
Yeah. So yes, as you mentioned, ma'am, that there are 17 goals, and all of that goals are interconnected. So success of one goal depends on the another, right? So, and also all corporates, governments, individual level also, and the businessmen, they have to come to together to achieve these goals. And India has adopted this SDG goals in 2015. And as per this SDG index report, currently it is standing at 109th with the score of 64 out of 193 UN members. So that's a good progress, but there's definitely a way to, there's a long way to go ahead. Yeah. So moving onwards, as we understood on the, evolution part of the SDG goals, let's understand how it is related to ESG factors. So there are 17 goals. First goal is about the no poverty. As ma'am also mentioned about the colors of the SDG goals. So as we can see, to the SDG goals, the relevant colors are given. So first was about no poverty. So that is connected with the social factor of the ESG. And the similar way, there are other goals for zero hunger, good health, well-being, and they are connected with the social factor. When we talk about gender equality, which is the fourth goal of the SDG, it is connected with the governance part. When we talk about the quality education, again, it is connected with the social. So, so out of these 17 goals, all of them are connected with either ESG or all the factors. So it is very well thought, while developing the ESG and the SDG goals. Yeah.
Thank you, Dolly, for taking through all of these details. Would you like me to add one or two points here?
Yes, you're sure.
Yeah. So, like for example, when you talk about SDG 6, which is the clean water and sanitation. So, if you look at the indicators for each of these goals, so like you must have studied about SMART goals, yeah,
Yeah.
Measurable, achievable, realistic, target specific, and all of that. Yeah, specific. S is specific. So, um, how were the Millennium Development Goals converted into SDGs? You can say the evolution when it happened, they brought in the SMART goal approach here. Like, for example, when you talk about SDG 6, the indicator 6.1.1 says percentage of population globally using safely managed drinking water services. Yeah. Indicator 6.3.1 says percentage of wastewater safely treated. Now, how does it and what does it have to do with business? Yeah. So now we have to understand that there are companies which which are into chemical, which are into textile, or there are companies which are into infrastructure like Welspun Enterprises. So when we talk about the chemical factories or textile factories, the biggest challenge in regards with their ESG is the effluent which comes out, and then it is impacting the water bodies, yeah, be it river, be it lakes, yeah, even for that matter, FMCG companies, yeah, like Coca-Cola and others. So when we talk about these companies, they are using the drinking water which is available in the neighborhood as that of the plant, whereas the same water is accessible. Who has the right over it is also the local community. So then there is somewhere a challenge between the business and the local community rights, right? And how, if we cannot achieve SDG 6 unless all of the businesses start taking responsibility and try to achieve the indicator as part of the SDG 6. So like in case of Welspun Enterprises, fortunately, we are on the part of empowering, the clean drinking water access through the Uttar Pradesh Jal Jeevan Mission, where we have enabled 2,500 villages the access to safe drinking water. So somewhere we are contributing to the SDG 6 through indicator 6.6.1. Yeah. Similarly, when we talk about the another indicator that I talked about, how is the wastewater being treated? Yeah. Again, there is another infrastructure project which Welspun Enterprise has, where we are helping build at Dharavi a wastewater treatment facility of 418 MLD capacity, where Mumbai's 1/6 wastewater will be treated. And through water circularity approach, it will be available for use again for construction and also for potable purposes through tertiary treatment. Some of it will come back. Yeah, getting further treated at Bhandup, water treatment facility and so on, which is actually water circularity in action. So I hope this case study has allowed everyone to look at what is SDG and what responsible businesses have to do and why that connection has come up, why the organizations have to talk about how they are aligned to SDGs and how they are impacting SDGs. Yeah, over to you.
Sudhakar sir, would you like to add on?
I will definitely add on, but not in the technical part, the way Dr. Aditi has mentioned it. She is taking more of technicalities, but I'm talking about compliance. So you see, as company secretaries, that the BRSR reporting is to be prepared by the top 1,000 listed entities, if I am not wrong. Now, the question comes several times, the company secretaries say that, look, the BRSR reporting itself is more or less we have to talk. I mean, and all the entire organization, whatever that the working and all is there, that is to be reflected in the BRSR. In fact, some companies they are outsourcing of this reporting also. But here the question is that if you understand this sustainability development goals or the that the principles of responsible business conduct, that 9 principles, one has to understand these things not only in letter but also in spirit. Normally, we say that when we talk about compliances, we always say that you have to read, I have to comply with not only by letter but by the spirit. I don't know how much that is applicable there, but here it is certainly applicable unless until you understand each and every goal here. Poverty means what? Hunger means what? Unless until you know what is a poverty and what is a hunger, you will never be able to understand the other that indicators or parameters, whatever are there. That is the reason for this 17 sustainable development goals. There are about 300 plus indicators or the parameters are there. The people who are going to take up this, now question comes to whom it is more important, especially in case of manufacturing companies who are tended to pollute the environment, who are tend to exploit the environment. It is their responsibility to protect not only the protect the environment but to restore the environment also. So they are the people who have to understand this very clearly, because the why that government has come with that NGRBC rules, so that principle says you have to do the business. Normally, in the legal parlance, what we say is when we talk about listing regulations or Companies Act and all those things, you have to do the business in compliance with the rules and regulations. Business should not be at the cost of compliance, but at the same point of time, compliance should not be at the cost of business. Both the things have to go vice versa. Whereas here, it again the same thing that when you are doing the business, it should not be at the cost of exploitation of the planet. So one has to do a kind of a responsible business. They have to do it, keeping in this thing that what you have inherited, that you have to hand it over to the future generations. In this meanwhile, whatever you are using it, you have to replenish or you have to restore that also. So as company secretaries or chartered accountants, it is our responsibility. Maybe as Dr. Aditi has said that we may not be able to do everything at one go only. This is a long journey. That's why, if I am not wrong, these SDG goals are there. I think up to 2030, if I am not wrong, around that time we need to achieve these things. But already enough time has passed. Almost it is 2015 they were adopted and we are in 2025. So one decade has already gone through.
Yes. Yeah.
But how many of us really understood this? How many corporates have really understood this? Have taken up this to implement it and all? It is a question mark. But having said that, say for example, if you see the section 135 corporate social responsibility, when it was introduced in the Companies Act 2013, first 4 5 years, it was going at a snail's pace only. To a large extent, now the companies got acclimatized to the legal provisions, and not only in letter but also in spirit, that we got the maturity as far as CSR activities are concerned. And it is a high time we have to have the same kind of maturity as far as your BRSR reporting is also concerned. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for giving the inputs. And I just want to highlight one more point as we, spoke about that SDG goals are interrelated. So just giving an example that if we talk about the gender equality, so if both the genders are treated equally, it will create a more employment, which will reduce the poverty, which will increase the economic growth. So that is how the goals are interconnected, and it is it is targeted for 2030. So we have like more 5 years to improvise and work towards better, for the achievement of SDG goals. So moving further. So let's talk about the national guidelines on responsible business conduct. So MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they have issued the national guidelines on responsible business conduct in 2019. So basically, NGRBC contains 9 thematic pillars of business responsibilities in terms of principles, which are called as principles. Each principle is introduced as a statement and followed by the narration of the essential aspects of the principles, referred to as a brief description. Also, these principles are accompanied by a set of requirements and actions that are essential for the organizations to follow and that are referred as a core elements. And these principles are again interdependent, interrelated, and non-divisible, and businesses have to address them holistically. Moving onwards, there are 9 principles. First is talking about the business should conduct and govern themselves with integrity in a manner that is ethical, transparent, and accountable. Second is talking about goods and services. Business should provide goods and services in a manner that is sustainable and safe. Third is about business should respect and promote well-being of the employees. So as we can see in all these 3 principles, first is more connected towards the governance. Second is more connected towards the environment. Third is more connected toward the, we can say, governance as well as social. The fourth principle, which talks about these business should respect the interest of and be responsive to all their stakeholders. Business should respect and promote human rights. Business should respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. Seventh principle is towards the business when engaging in influencing public and regulatory policy should do in a manner that is responsible and transparent. The 8th principle is talking about business should promote inclusive growth and equitable development. And the 9th is talking about business should engage with and provide value to their consumers in a responsible manner. So this all 9 principles are connected with the ESG factors. And over to you, Aditi ma'am, now.
Yeah, thank you, Dolly, for comprehensively covering that particular part. And looking from the point of view of Welspun Enterprises, I would say that I would encourage all of you to access the BRSR reports which are published for the organization and look at it as a case study, so that you are able to understand in detail, what the BRSR, standard is all about. So where the general disclosures, of course, is the first section, as Dolly had mentioned earlier. And then, after the initial section, the next section basically talks about all of these 9 principles, and which are more of quantitative metrics of the performance of the organization aligned to E, S, and G. So Dolly has very well explained as to how these each principles align with SDGs, yeah, and how these principles are then, monitored. So now I'll talk from the point of view of a practitioner, as an ESG professional, what that each principle means for us and what do we do about it, yeah. So like, for example, when you talk about principle 1, which is ethics, transparency, and accountability. So here I basically will talk about, do we have the code of conduct and a whistleblower policy in place? Do we have the independence ESG governance structure in place? So like, for talking about Welspun Enterprises, we have a separate board committee called as ESG and CSR committee. And under this particular committee, we have an independent director, Dr. Aruna Sharma, who leads the ESG and CSR committee for us. And apart from that, we just 1 minute, huh, Dolly?
Okay, till the time I think Dr. Aditi joins, and okay, and as far as the first principle is concerned, let me express my views. So, see, first
Sorry,
principle talks. So, yeah,
there's
yeah,
some
go ahead.
challenge. There is some
Yeah, no
challenge.
problem.
Mr. Sudhakar, if you can manage for just 2 minutes, I'll connect back again in the webinar.
Certainly, I will do that. I will do that. So, what I was mentioning is that, in fact, the first principle, as Dolly has mentioned, it talks about business should conduct and govern with integrity in a manner that is ethical, transparent, and accountable. Now, how we will comply with this principle? It talks about that the business should be conducted in accordance with the governance principles. So, what are the governance principles? So, you have to establish a robust governance structure. You need to understand very clearly. Similarly, the company has to have, as Dr. Aditi has rightly mentioned, you have to have a code of conduct. You have for the both directors and senior management, maybe in alignment with Schedule 4 and in alignment with listing regulations. In addition to that, every company normally has certain ethics, values, and all, and the culture of the company is also equally there. So one need to have a governance structure in place stating about that what are the what is the vision of the company and what is the mission of the company, what are the values of the company, and in detail, okay, that should be there. And according to after that, also you need to have proper delegation of authority, proper delegation of power, so that if anything happens, okay, that say for example a whistleblower has blown a whistle with regard to certain issues, then what is the mechanism for that? By merely having these things for the namesake will not do it. You have to drill down everything into detail. When we talk about whistleblower policy, yes, it should be as a because if we have to have go with the principle one, you have to have a whistleblower policy. Now the question comes that what is the mechanism for that? How that at what stage the whistleblowers can blow the whistle? Once they blow the whistle, what is the mechanism? How it will get escalated from one authority to the another authority, or either upwards or downwards, whichever the way it is. And where it starts, the investigation, how it is to be started, and how it is to be progressed further, and who has to take what sort of calls, and ultimately the access to whether it is dealt with by the board or audit committee. Most of the times, whistleblower is to be monitored by the audit committee only. So the access to the audit committee chairman is also equally important. Sometimes it may so happen certain sensitive issues wherever they are there, those issues need to be escalated at the audit committee chairman level, because in between that the moment you start reporting it, the things may get diluted. At the same point of time, we have to also ensure the protection of the whistleblower, the identity of the whistleblower need. There should be can be some kind of opaqueness should be there. The identity need to be protected, and similarly, equal amount of protection is to be given to the whistleblower. At the end of the day, whenever these kind of things come, as a good governance policy of the company, what need to be do is to by that pace is the essence. That means whenever a company a thing comes, it should not happen that inquiry goes for years together and all, but they need to be resolved at the earliest stage. Yeah, Dr. Aditi, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sudhakar ji, for taking everyone into deep dive into the principle one, which we were mentioning here, and as you all also I was explaining beyond the whistleblower policy about the ESG governance structure. So that is another very important part when it comes to principle one. And I was mentioning that it's very important to announce that you have a proper board level committee in place, which is having a governance and oversight for the ESG performance in relation to the organization. So like, for example, in case of Welspun Enterprises, the ESG and CSR committee was formed way back in 2021. And since then, this committee has been overlooking and also, advising in regards with the ESG policy, the framework, the ESG strategy, and the ESG action for that matter. So they have been monitoring the ESG action from the day one. So that's about the principle one. Do we have time to go to principle 2 and 3 and 4? Just an overview of it, Dolly. Does that look good?
I think that is very much required, Dr. Aditi. Let us go like that.
Okay. Okay, sure. So coming to now the principle 2, which talks about, products and services that are safe and sustainable. Now, particularly here, though it doesn't apply to Welspun Enterprises case as it is applicable because we are into projects and infrastructure. For us, the look is completely different. But however, for manufacturing companies, for that matter, which have particular product, they'll have to carry out life cycle analysis of their product and understand how their product and the packaging of the product has impact and whether they are sustainable and safe. What all certifications they'll have to take in regards with the product to say that it is sustainable and safe. Like, for example, in case of Brsr, I had an opportunity to attend the presentation given by Mr. Angelo George, who is the CEO of Brsr. And Angelo was, talking about, the water footprint of Brsr as a product. There was a comparison between Brsr and the other products, and they would comment that because they are working a lot in rainwater harvesting, because they are working a lot on, water recycling and so on and so forth, the comparative water footprint of Brsr as a product is lesser. So this is just one case study which will give you an idea as to what it means by sustainable and safe. So now, how does it apply to an organization where our product is projects? Yeah. So in our case, how we look at it is whether our projects are climate resilient and how our projects are sustainable. So I'll give you one example of that, how it would be that a project becomes a sustainable project. We use cement. We are into building road and the water infrastructure. So instead of cement, we are using now fly ash, which is the waste of thermal power plant. Yeah. And that particular sustainable misplaced resource would have gone to landfill and created so much of problem, right? Instead, it has replaced another product, cement, for which a lot of mining would have to be done. Then it's making, then it's logistics, and so on and so forth. Instead, fly ash, which is a misplaced resource of one, is brought into by circular economy principle to replace cement for a particular percentage. So that is how we can say that the project has become sustainable a bit more. Yeah. So that was principle 2. I'll just rush a little bit and so that we are able to cover all of the principles. Next is principle 3, employee well-being. And as part of the employee well-being, here we talk about health insurance, accident cover, on-site medical aid. How about the training, uh, particularly in that safety training? Yeah. How about the skill development roadmap for the employees which are onboarded? So all of these aspects would be covered in Principle 3. Now, when you talk about again Welspun Enterprise as a case, we are into infrastructure and where occupational health safety environment OHSE is the most material topic for us, and in that we talk at length about the safety training which is given, and I'm happy some of my HSE team members are also here attending the training program today. So the safety training is taken very seriously at the organization, and that is discussed as part of here Principle 3.
In fact,
Now,
Dr. Aditi, only one more thing I want to add to Principle
sure.
3 is the safety of employees, especially in case of women employees in that environment, the work environment, not only within the organization, even sometimes even outside the organization is also equally important. Several times it may so happen they have to work for late hours. At that point of time, it is the responsibility of the companies to ensure the safety of the employees, especially in case of female. It's not like that only for females you have to do it. You have to do it for every employee, especially when they're leaving the office, say, for example, at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the night. Most of the companies like in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, all these cities, it is imperative for us to work at least, if not throughout the year at certain times. So every organization should have some kind of a mechanism to get a feedback that the especially in case of female employees, they reach at home safely. In fact, let me tell you that my daughter was working in Amazon at Bangalore. They have this thing that after 8 o'clock, if the females are sitting but working, there is a cab which drop them down at the respective locations. And there used to be a monitoring mechanism at the Amazon office that which is the car number and all, and they used to map that car also. Once the employee reaches home, online she has to say that reached or something like that. A report has to go back, and they used to maintain the data of which female has gone at which hour, reached at what time, which vehicle she has used it, all that entire information, the repository that Amazon used to have. I mean, of course, every organization can have its own mechanisms, but under point 3, apart from everything, the safety of the employees is very, very important. Yeah.
Absolutely true, Sudhakarji, and I 100% agree with you. In fact, I would say 200% agree with you that it's not just the safety at the workplace, but overall safety. Uh, in fact, for infrastructure companies, it is 24 hours safety of the worker, and not just because the site sometimes goes on day and night for that matter. But the point that you mentioned that uh, even while traveling for towards the workplace and back, yeah, that safety is also something that empathetically that the organizations have to take responsibility
In
and
fact, in case of Reliance, that because we have to deal with okay, the refinement of crude oil and all, with the refineries, what is important is the safety and health. So we used to have a health, safety and environment committee, HSC committee. We used to have it. So in that, right from up to the board level, we used to have the committee. That is a board level committee, which is not mandatory, but we used to have it. So wherein that it should be a complete trees to get percolate down to every factory also used to have that HSC committees. And ultimately, on quarterly basis, the board is to get a report on as far as HSC is concerned, not only reporting what happened during the quarter, but what sort of improvements you are bringing it from the learnings across the globe. That is equally important. So we used to have that kind of a mechanism. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, sir. I 100% agree with you. And should we go to the next one?
yeah, please.
Yeah, yeah. So, talking about principle 4, which revolves mainly around the stakeholder engagement. And when I say it revolves around stakeholder engagement, the first step that the organization has to take is towards identifying who are the stakeholders applicable to the organization. And in this, this has to be a very comprehensive exercise. And there is just a difference that I would like to bring to the notice here between the shareholder and the stakeholder. Yeah. So these are, two different, like the stakeholders would include shareholders, but beyond your shareholders, there are so
Yes,
many other stakeholders which are part of the stakeholders which have to be mapped for the ESG. So your customers are your stakeholders. Yeah. Your suppliers are your stakeholders. Your subcontractors may be your stakeholders. Your financial institutions with whom you do the business, yeah, or your investors for that matter, they may be your stakeholders, yeah. The community in general. So wherever your projects are, where your plants are operating, yeah, uh, with the CSR activities that you're doing with those local communities, they are your stakeholders. And in general public in India and globally is also actually a stakeholder in a distant manner that way. So but then amongst the core stakeholders, you have to identify who all are the stakeholders who are core stakeholders for the organization, and then look at as the circle, um, concentrate circle beyond 1, 2, 3, at what levels you can identify the stakeholders and who need to be. So again, in the stakeholder mapping, once you do it, there is something called as RACI matrix that you have to take up, where you have to identify which are the stakeholders which are to be only informed. Yeah, which are the stakeholders with whom you have to consult and take their advice. Which are the stakeholders which are your decision makers and whom you have to reach out before you take your decisions and take the advice from them. So the RACI matrix, and who is the owner and responsible and for a particular thing, that is R. So you have to do the RACI matrix and find out which are the most core stakeholder to that of the stakeholders which are applicable to a particular uh, organization, sector, and so on and so forth. In fact, even the governmental authorities is one of the most critical stakeholder, yeah, which need to be kept informed, like MPCB, yeah, um, or for that matter, in case of Welspun Enterprises, not just MPCB, but some other governmental authority. Um, for us, probably the governmental authority could also be in the form of a client, right? So they are also customer. So there may be dual role which a particular authority may play or a particular agency may play as stakeholder in the case of an organization. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Okay, Dr. Aditi, in reference to principle 3, there is a question that
Uh-huh.
it doesn't feel that, however, it doesn't feel that when looking at the ideology of corporate CXOs, who meant to say that they feel employees should work 90 hours in a week. How can these guidelines help to secure the well-being of employees? What would happen if companies become such unreasonable?
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, can I
So
attempt this answer to this question, Dr.
go ahead,
Aditi?
go ahead, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead, sir.
You see that, in fact, this 90 hours, this thing is an off-the-cuff remark of the L&T chairman. Let us not go ahead with that. Or even the remark of the Mr. Narayan Murthy of Infosys for 70 hours. But see, it so happened times, if not throughout the year, as I was mentioned that, at times we have to sit late hours and then we have to work. And sometimes the pressure may be more than ENY case, whatever has happened. Let us not go into details of those things. These kind of aberrations are there certainly. But what organizations have to do is that periodically, from time to time, they need to have organized some training programs, not only on the domain expertise or on the subject itself, but they need to have some kind of, other than the what's called as okay, like you may call it as a soft skill, or you may call it any name you may give it. Say, for example, how to handle pressure. Some kind of training is required. So the people have to understand that pressure will be there. And if you take the pressure in a positive way, it will add to your performance. If you take it in a negative way, obviously it is going to lead to some unfortunate events also. So how to handle that? But at the same point of time, sometimes it may so happen there may be some bosses who are quite unreasonable. So it is the responsibility of the CHROs to identify these kind of toxic managers who are there. They're exceptional, they're not there in every organization, but sometimes it may so happen. If there are, suppose, 100, 200 managers are there, whether it is a top level or whether it is a middle level, some toxic managers may be there, and they need to be, whatever that kind of a thing is there, that proper CHROs have to keep an eye, and then need to be handled these kind. Similarly, at any point of, this is called as whistleblower mechanism. Sometimes it may so happen you may not be coming out directly, but you blow the whistle, and then obviously that the issue will be addressed. This is how it is to be done. You may add it something to that, Aditi, to that question.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you that there could be one or few cases when it comes to such unreasonable demands when it comes to employees, and definitely that hampers, and this concern is very well taken, that it is inhumanly expecting someone to work for those many hours, considering the hours of travel, considering so there will be no time left for the family. In fact,
In fact,
work-life balance.
just to add to this, during the COVID period, several organizations used to have yoga sessions, meditation sessions on virtual platforms, so that the people are not to get into depression kind of issue. So there used to be a lot of things. So what happened is the HR, or you may call it whichever the department it is, somebody should be there who has to train the employees on these aspects also. Yeah, sorry,
Correct.
please go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. And there is a very beautiful comment by Sanjay in the chat box, and I would like to appreciate Sanjay for that. In fact, on a personal note, I'm probably most productive early morning hours. And whatever thinking happens in that early morning hour when I'm up, through the day, I just implement it. So, what is truly meant by the productive time for a particular person, and whether it has to be compulsory some hours is always a question mark. But definitely there is a discipline also needed when it comes to the organization and the organization structure to be maintained. So what Sanjay says, that it's a fine balance, again, a fine balance between the discipline and the autonomy, yeah, which will allow maximum productivity for the organization. Yeah. So I 100% agree. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's already 5. We need to, little speed up.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dolly, for reminding us again. And sometimes we get carried away with such a nice discussion happening around it. Yeah. So over to the principle 5, where we talk about human rights. Now here, no child labor, yeah, or forced labor policy. Then the workers' dignity. Is there grievance mechanism in place where the grievances are received? How much time is taken to close the grievances? In the last year, how many grievances were registered? How many grievances were closed during the last year? How many are open? What are the reasons why they are open? So all of these things have to be reported as part of the principle 5, that is human rights. You talk about POSH policy, you talk about all of your human rights related to policies over here. Yeah, so that that was just the overview. Of course, we'll be going in depth each principle, understanding the case studies of different organizations. Uh, as part of this principle, there is also the discussion about details of remuneration, salary, wages of your key managerial personnel, your board of directors, and workers, and what is the gap between these.
This hierarchy.
So yeah. So that discussion that also has to be reported in actual numbers, yeah, as part of this particular principle. As I mentioned, the complaints could be regarding. So I was talking about the grievances, right? The complaints could be in regards with sexual harassment, discrimination at workplace, child labor, forced labor, wages, and POSH for that matter. Yeah. So these could be the different issues in regards with which the complaints could be registered, and then the tracking is happening as part of BRSR as to how many complaints were registered and how many were closed. So what is most important is, so it's not that no complaint should come. That is not practically probably possible. Of course, for most of the organizations, that's the goal. But then even if the complaints are coming, are there enough steps taken to close those complaints? That's the most important part. Okay, so that was the next principle. Would Sudhakar ji like to add
Go ahead,
anything?
You just complete that. Wherever I have to come, I will join you definitely.
Sure. Yeah. So the
Yeah,
next,
we are just 6 o'clock and that's
yeah,
See,
I know hard stop.
in fact, Dipti, what I request you is that even if we have to, stop with this slide itself, I don't mind it. The reason being, this is the foundation. Unless until we understand this particular slide, there is no point of going further, according to me. I'm sure that Dr. Aditi will agree with me. So, because see, each and every principle, you have to understand the what's called as underlying value of the principle and what the regulators are expecting from us. That is very important. Without understanding this, if we are just rushing through the remaining presentation, that's only mapping part is there. Even if we have to do it in the next webinar, we should not mind it according to me. And rest, I will leave it to your people, whatever you want to decide it.
So even I think that would be great that we take up each principle little depth, and I think probably Dolly would have also planned it accordingly, that taking each principle in depth later on. Would you like to just um, make me go through each principle overview in next 5 minutes, or we'll leave it as it is, and then over to you, Dolly. The decision would be yours now.
Yeah, ma'am, we can definitely go ahead with the overview. Considering you have to leave probably by 6:20. So if you are okay, then we are okay to go ahead with the overview.
Yeah. So maybe just I'll give just overview of the principle 6 here. We talk about the environmental protection, and when we talk about environmental protection, most of the important reportings happen here, and GHG emission is the primemost. And when we talk about the greenhouse gas emissions, in that you talk about 3 scopes, yeah, in which the greenhouse gas emissions are happening. Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. Scope 1 is the GHG emissions which come directly from the operations of the organization, where the organization has operational control and is also responsible directly for those GHG emissions. Okay, so that is scope 1. Scope 2 is the electricity that you take for the organization for running all of those operations, where you have not directly emitted those greenhouse gases, But for running your operations, you have used electricity, and for that electricity, because it is coal-based, if it is coal-based electricity, someone else has done some emissions which you are responsible for. Okay, so that is scope 2 emissions. And what scope 3 is, to bring your goods, to bring your people for the operations, yeah, across your value chain, there was some greenhouse gas emission, and that is scope 3. Now, for
Transportation would be the measure. Yeah.
correct. So whether fleet, so whether it is people or whether it is goods, yeah, for that, what went into the emissions, that is scope 3. Yeah. So now here, in environmental protection, you talk about, beyond GHG, you talk about energy that you have consumed, but no, you don't talk about absolute numbers. However, you talk about intensity, in the sense, here, what was your turnover last year? What was energy consumption as against that turnover? What is your turnover now? And what is the energy consumption now? Even though your turnover is going above, you try and maintain your intensity. That's the expectation. That means you have taken some effort for energy conservation, some effort for improving the energy efficiency, in spite of your turnover going in a positive direction up. Yeah. Now, that is energy intensity. Similarly, emissions intensity is another thing that you talk about. Again, emission intensity, same way compared to your turnover. Okay. Then water intensity. Yeah. How much is the water consumed for the operations as compared to the turnover? Yeah. Then the waste intensity. Okay. So how much waste was generated? Yeah. And then out of waste generated, how much has been recycled, reused, repurposed? Yeah. So there are so many R's there. Okay. Reduced. Okay. So reporting around that. Okay. So that is the principle 6. Just to give
That
an
the
overview.
waste disposal mechanism is very important. How you are improving the waste disposal mechanism.
Yeah.
That is of a great paramount importance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just one brief sentence I'll give here, that in infrastructure industry, the waste is very valuable, which comes out. So see, in this particular sector, the circularity is typically in place, and the waste, circularity with the sustainable management is in place. So 350 metric ton of the construction waste, could be steel scrap, with debris, road dismantled, and so on and so forth, was reused at Welspun Enterprises. And now you see also EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, under which many of the FMCG companies are repurposing a lot of plastic waste. And as much waste they would repurpose, recycle, that much plastic only they would be using next year in their manufacturing operations. Okay, so there are a lot of ramifications there. We'll discuss in detail in the next podcast
In
series.
fact, I read somewhere the medical waste is so hazardous than of a nuclear waste also.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. I 100% agree with you. Yeah. In case of plastic also, the microplastic,
Yeah,
we only have a decade with us before it becomes nano microplastic. And once it is lost, it is very difficult to recover. And it would enter everywhere. So every week, the food we eat, 1 credit card worth of plastic is what we have ingested through food, air, and water, which is 5 grams of plastic. And that is unfortunate reality. And then we say, and then we say that cancer is on rise. And then we say, health is not improving and so on and so forth.
This is all connected. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there we talk about responsible business. Yeah. SDG 3, good health and well-being. We cannot achieve it unless EPR is in place. Yeah. And that is the interconnection which, Dolly has been talking about, all this while. Yeah. So, just maybe last, 3 principles. Principle 7, the public and the regulatory policy. So how compliant you are in terms of the policies, guidelines given by SEBI, yeah. Then MOFCC, like the Ministry of Foreign Forestry and so on and so forth, or NHAI in case of us, the NHAI policies, yeah. So whether you're participating in the different industry forums, like maybe CII, yeah, or maybe how you're connected with the Carbon Markets Association of India, CMAI, or maybe for that matter, Sustainable Water Coalition internationally, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are the different industry forums. So what Principle 7 has to say is, see, business by themselves cannot be sustainable unless the ecosystem matures and becomes sustainable. And how are you contributing to getting the ecosystem towards maturity and towards sustainability? यानी एक अच्छा जो व्यक्ति है एक फैमिली का, वो पूरी फैमिली को प्रोग्रेसिव पाथ पे लेके जाता है ना. One who achieves something in life, the whole family progresses with that person. Similarly, that's the expectation from the organization. They take along them the whole industry, the whole ecosystem, and help others also to develop better. Yeah. So that's the principle 7.
Okay.
Principle 8 is about inclusive growth and equitable development. Here, basically, you talk about all of your CSR activities. But when I say CSR, we have to remember one very critical point, that CSR goes hand in hand with your sustainability and goes hand in hand with your ESG and BRSR reporting. Like, what are your material topics? And what SDGs are you impacting most? And accordingly, you have to identify what CSR activities that you should be taking up strategically and ensure that you are making substantial impact there. Like, for example, in case of infrastructure, communities get displaced. How are you working closely with those displaced communities for their ensuring that their human rights are intact in regards with education, in regards with healthcare, in regards with women empowerment, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then, like for example, we are into road infrastructure. So aligned to that, we have Welspun program, which is road safety, where the awareness is carried out, training programs are carried out, regular eye checkups are done for drivers, and so on and so forth. Okay, so Welspun program. So like this, every organization has to identify the CSR activities aligned to what SDGs you impact, what business you are in, and aligned to that, what CSR activities have to be carried out. Again, an interconnection there. I just rush through the last one now, which is the responsible consumer engagement. That is the 9th principle. And here a lot of focus is given on the stakeholder disclosures in regards with what are the public grievances which were received. Then, what stakeholder disclosures are there in regards with EIs, the environmental impact assessment, which is happening. So all of that part is critical for Welspun Enterprise when you talk about the principle 9. So I think I've just touched 690 here, and we have finished just the overview today of these all 9 principles. Of course, as we discussed, we will be taking each of these in depth, analyzing them, understanding them, and giving you the case studies as to how we address those reportings. Yeah. Over to you, Dolly.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for, to both of you to providing, such an, it was actually not, I cannot say it's just an overview. It gives a very, start of the insight, I can say, which was actually very much required. So moving onwards, as we have already covered how SDG and NGRBC, ESG, that all are related. So I will quickly, move ahead. Yeah. So now this is the last part and also important part. That is the reason why we were having this session, because it is given under the BRSR, and section B and section C is derived from NGRBC principles. So that is the reason we were having this understanding for the NGRBC principles, so that the professionals, while they are preparing the BRSR report, they know the basics about these principles, and they can put the reporting accordingly. So yeah, here ma'am and sir, if you would like to add on anything, as I'm not going through this slide because we all are aware about the format. Yeah.
See, the only thing what I do, what I request you, Dolly, is that when you are devising the next webinar topic, I request you to please consult Dr. Aditi, because with her experience, let us focus upon those issues which are very, very important. Say, in fact, today what we could have done is an insight into the NGRBC principles, because we would have discussed it at great length. The reason being, as you rightly said, even SDG goals are also to be mapped to those 9 principles only. BRSR is also depending upon that only. So unless until we understand those 9 principles in spirit, we will not be able to do justice to the BRSR or its reporting even. So business is to be done with a responsibility, not only sustainability, but also with some kind of responsibility. And those 9 principles, if we read that, the headers itself is giving a lot of meaning in that. So my request to the participants is to kindly go through that 9 principles of NGRBC principles, and then you will have fair amount of an idea, and you will appreciate what is BRSR or SDGs. Yes, Dr. Aditi.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to work out the next topics, but I would also appreciate that this was logically a very important good topic drafted by Dolly, and that's really appreciable. Only thing is probably we'll have to take small bites at a time going forward, so that we also are able to deep dive, which will suffice the hunger of learning of the audience here. So in that sense, probably we'll have to put ourselves into shoes of the audience, and then devise the next topics probably bit smaller pieces, and where we can also do deep dive. There are only 3 questions which have been asked by Santosh ji here, and I would like to address those questions shortly. That is okay.
Yeah, please.
So beyond BRSR, what is the basis of NGRBCs? We have already discussed what is the basis. Mainly it is coming from, the SDGs only, and that the nation has committed to the sustainable development goals. But how will we achieve unless the corporates also achieve it? Okay, so NGRBCs, you have understood by now, I think, what is the basis of NGRBC's principles. Next question by Santoshji is, beyond BRSR, how can a company arrive at the right reporting framework for their sustainability reports? Yes, beyond BRSR also, sustainability reporting has to be done. And I won't say that that's the only way, but GRI is a very comprehensive standard. Now we have to understand there are two different aspects here. There could be different reporting frameworks, but there are only few standards. Okay, so when we talk about GRI, BRSR, they are reporting standards. Yeah, but you talk about others like PC, FD, and others. They are reporting frameworks. Yeah, so that's the basic difference between the two that we have to grasp first. So when we say what is the standard to which you have to align, GRI is one of the most comprehensive, and that's why GRI is followed as a reporting standard for sustainability reporting. But then you also include TCFD in it. You include what is applicable to your organization according to the scope of your operations, according to the boundaries that you have set when it defining the ESG scope. Okay, so that's the parameters that you have to keep in mind when reporting your sustainability reports. And the last question which Santoshi has, which entities are required to conduct social impact assessment? Now, which entities? Any entity which is having a substantial CSR activity, all of those organizations, and I'm sure Dolly is an expert at that and can guide you a little better. But all of these organizations, wherever the CSR activity is being done, and they have to further report it to the board committee as to how the spend has been, what the impact has been. Yeah, and so for that, it has to be then third party verified, audited and verified. Yeah, so that's why the social impact assessment is necessary. Yeah, so just my hard stop here, but I would request Dolly ji and you all to, because you are an expert of this particular thing, if you would like to throw some light on this particular question. And can I take the leave? Is it okay?
Yeah, we can close it since
Now we can close it. Yeah.
and we will take this further, and we will work out that each principle detail. Can I explain in next webinar further with one by one, and then each principle how connected to BRSR and how it will be presented in BRSR. That way, I think we can go ahead, right?
Sure.
Okay,
Looks good.
and we will connect for you for that. Okay, thanks,
Sure.
thanks, Dr. Aditi. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Aditi.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, amazing discussion, Sudhakar ji. Thank you.
Sure,
Dipti ma'am.
definitely.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
And thank you to the audience to make it meaningful.
Thank you.